Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us at our SEND webinar. This evening is all about sharing information on the latest SEND developments in Wiltshire and also hearing from you. We are recording this session and it will be available on the Wiltshire Council YouTube channel. Next slide, please, Dom. If you need to use closed captions or subtitles, please click on the CC button, which you can find at the bottom corner of your screen. This will turn on closed captions, subtitles for the speaker's words. You can also change the caption language by selecting Settings, Captions, Subtitles, and choosing the language you want. Please be aware that this function is not currently available on Teams app for mobile devices. Okay, so on with the evening. I'd like to pass over to Daryl Freeman, who's our Corporate Director for Children and Education, who will explain a little more about how this evening will work and provide further information. So thank you, and next slide please, Don.
Hello everyone. I should introduce myself first, as most of you won't have met me yet. So I'm Daryl, and I'm the new Interim Corporate Director for Children and Education, almost 3 weeks into the role, and I'm really pleased to be here this evening, and I'm looking forward to sharing our news and also to hearing from you. Next slide, please, Tom. So this evening we'll be sharing information on our latest SEND developments. We'll then have an interactive survey where you can share your views with us anonymously. We'll then have a question and answer session, and a number of colleagues will join us for that one where we can try and answer your questions. You don't have to wait until the question and answer session. You can start typing your questions in the chat now, and we'll be picking them up during the presentation. We'll do our best to get through as many as possible this evening, and then we'll publish these questions online later. Next slide, please. So I'm really pleased to have this opportunity to share some of what's been happening in Wiltshire. You'll be aware of our 5-year SEND and alternative provision plan, which we've created with you and is now published. That plan has 6 priorities. We want children and young people and their families to be at the heart of planning, so we capture your views and aspirations as true partners. We want to get you the right support at the right time, identifying and acting on our children's needs at the earliest opportunity, and through promotion of inclusive approaches and practice across the local area. We want to provide opportunities for timely planning, reflective of the views of the child or young person and parent carers' current needs, and that have clear outcomes. We will ensure we have good quality communication and information so that you have a positive experience when navigating services with information that is easy to access and use. As professionals and officers across the SEND system, we'll have the skills, knowledge and training so we work together across services with joint assessments and sharing of good practice. And our children and young people will be prepared for adulthood and experience timely transitions. Why is this important? Because getting this right leads to increased skills, greater independence and a greater range of opportunities in life. Now that's a lot to take in on one slide, but all the information is on our local offer website and you'll see the links in the chat. We'll also add them in at the end of this evening. And now I'd like to pass on to Catherine Davis, Director for Education and Skills.
Thank you, Daryl. It's really good to have you joining us on this webinar this evening. So thank you again for making the time to join us. We do really appreciate that. I'm going to go through a couple of slides now, just talking about some of the things that have been happening in Wiltshire over the last several months, and also things that are priorities for us over the coming weeks and months before we move on to a more interactive session. So Dom, please could you put the next slide on the screen? Lovely. So in terms of latest developments, the thing that has felt really powerful for us in the local area over recent months is the work that we have been doing with parent carers and partners around co-production of our new SEND AP and inclusion strategy, and that strategy is meeting needs together, ambitious for all. And that co-production work, that joint working with you as parent carers, really does have a very powerful impact on our planning. And that is something we're very proud of and want to do more of. And events like this tonight are part of that ongoing commitment for us to keep talking to you and listening and acting on what we hear. we want this strategy to be something that we live and breathe, and where parent and carers can hold us to account around delivery of that strategy. And again, we'll keep putting more of these sorts of events in place in order for that to happen. We've got really high aspirations for our children and young people with SEND, and as we produced our new strategy, we worked with Wiltshire Still and our young pioneers. And the challenge that was put to us was whether or not we were being ambitious enough for our children and young people with SEND. And we really welcomed that challenge as part of our strategy. And that's why the title of it is not just Meeting Needs Together. It's that second part that is really important, ambitious for all, and we are committed to that. The other development we wanted to mention tonight was the investment that's happening in family hubs and in our communities. And the support and guidance that's available to families and young people 0 to 25 through our family hub offer. Our family hubs are run on behalf of Wiltshire Council by the charity Spurgeons, and Spurgeons receive funding from Wiltshire Council to help them run the hubs. And really the ambition and the aim of those family hubs is so that families are supported to develop and flourish in our local communities. So examples of offers of support that are available from family hubs include one-to-one support in the home, parenting advice and groups, help to access services, and support from community navigators are just some of the examples that have been shared with us from colleagues in family hubs. We want to make sure there are more opportunities for young people to share their views. So Wiltshire Centre for Independent Living is really a key part of that. But also we have a development in our voice and participation service within the council, where we are prioritising making sure that we are hearing the voice of our children and young people with SEND and using what we are told by our young people to shape the services and what we're providing. We also want to make sure that we're developing the offer we have available around supported internships and apprenticeship opportunities. And I think what we're going to pop in the chat in a moment is a link to a YouTube video around internships and what we're doing in that space alongside Wiltshire College. And that feels like a really important piece of development work for us that is already underway and that we want to build further upon. Can I have the next slide, please, Dom? And then into the future for special needs and alternative provision. So we're making already a commitment to having more staff and new teams so that we can be confident that we're able to respond more quickly and readily to parents and carers when you need to communicate with us. So we're focusing on mainstream inclusion, we're focusing on building capacity and improving our ability to be responsive to our parents and carers. We've also heard our parent carers tell us, we've heard you tell us about the need for something like a portal, somewhere that you're able to get information easily and at the click of a button. So we're working with some system experts to find out how we create that portal to support navigation for parents and carers. So for example, if as a family you were going through the education, health and care needs assessment process, you could at the click of a button see where you were in that process and have direct access to that information. We also want to renew that commitment around young people being at the centre of the planning and what we do. And that voice element is crucial, as I've said before, really, that you said we did accountability that we have to our children and young people in Wiltshire. There's also been a really significant investment in school places, and since 2020 that has been a dramatic increase. So we've created an additional 875 special school places since 2020. That's 240 primary school resource spaces and 40 secondary resource spaces and 595 places in special schools. And we have got ongoing plans to create more, so an additional 410 places. So that will be 50 more primary resource spaces, 30 secondary resource spaces, and 330 additional special school places. We want our children in Wiltshire to be able to stay in Wiltshire and access school in their local communities, and we're creating a future that enables that to happen. And then lastly on this slide, I just want to reference the fact that we are committed to creating more opportunities for employment. We're keen for more employers to take on working with our SEND young people, and we've recently launched a SEND Employer Champion scheme. We've already got a number of employers who've signed up to that, which is very exciting, and we'll share some more news on that as it unfolds. And that's in addition to the other employment and apprenticeship opportunities that are underway. So we're very much looking forward to continuing to working with you as parent carers. And if we could go on to the next slide, please. This is the point where we want this to become much more interactive. And I'm going to ask my colleague Jerry Kemp, who started off the evening session for us, to explain how this next element of the session will work. Thanks, Jerry.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to move on to some questions now. We've had some questions coming in, so thank you very much to those who have submitted some on the chat for us. The one that we're going to start with, and just to say that we're going to have some speakers who will be able to answer those questions. We have them ready, and I'd also like to introduce Lisa Fryer, who's our head of SEND and Inclusion, to join us, and she's going to be answering some of these questions. Okay, so the first question that I'd like to ask of our speakers, somebody has asked here, what are you going to do to improve communication with parents and carers, especially when responding to questions and inquiries? So, Lisa Fry, could I ask you to respond to that one, please?
Many thanks, Jerry, and good evening, everyone. Yes, very happy to answer the first question. So I think one of the first things to reference is how we're increasing capacity in our statutory SEND team, particularly in our assessment team, but across our locality teams, preparation for adulthood team, etc., so that we're able to respond to parents and carers quickly and provide the right support and help without delay. We recognise this hasn't always been the experience for our families, but it is something we're actively working on to improve with a significant recruitment campaign which has been underway for some time and continues. Other ways in which we're supporting this work are by developing a new SEND advice line for parent carers and professionals. That would include SENCOs who also regularly want to reach out to us and have additional support and guidance. And really the SEND advice line is about being able to seek information and for us to be able to signpost to the right support. Early help and support is the focus of that helpline, both very, very important, of course. And I think it's also really important to reference how we want more events like this. I'm particularly interested to see the interest in the evening webinars and can absolutely understand why those would be helpful for parents and carers in particular, juggling busy family lives. We do feel it's important to have more listening events and to make ourselves available to answer questions, particularly where we're developing new areas of work or support. Obviously, the new strategy allowed really good opportunities for this, but as we move into the implementation plan phase, we need to consult and reach out to our parents and carers further. So hopefully that answers the first question, Jerry.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you very much. Okay, we have another one here. My child is too anxious to attend school. What does mental health support look like for children in Wiltshire schools? How are you improving the support available? I wonder, Catherine, could you answer that one, please?
Yes, absolutely, Jerry. Thank you. And I just want to pause for a moment as well and just say thank you very much, everybody, for your contributions to the Menti poll that Jerry did earlier. That information will be used. It's really important and powerful that we hear from you in that way. So that's not just a one moment in time exercise, that is information that will be used. And in response to this specific question about anxiety, and children's school attendance and what we're doing around making sure that the support is available in schools around mental health or emotional well-being, I just want to say it's really important, I think, that we acknowledge how difficult it can be for families when your child is experiencing high levels of anxiety around school attendance. I know some of you who are listening as parent carers will know that sometimes this can be called emotionally based school avoidance or emotionally based school absence. We sometimes hear that abbreviated to EBSA, and we know that nationally there's been an increase in this since the pandemic. In terms of what this looks like in Wiltshire, our educational psychology service has produced a really helpful toolkit which is available online, and that's for parent carers and for schools to use for support, and it's an open access resource. One of our special schools, Silverwood, ran a parents' workshop during the summer term, and that was focused on EBSA. It was really very well attended and well received by those who took part, and we know that more events like that would be really helpful. So we'll be looking to explore how we do that. We've also been working with our education welfare service within the council, making sure that our communication to schools is clear so that we're giving that clarity about the support that should be in place for children and families where there's anxiety or challenges around emotional well-being that are linked to school absence. And obviously making sure that we're working across the partnership and working closely with colleagues in health, such as CAMS and Oxford Help. So for an example of that, I think that I'd share would be the mental health support teams in Wiltshire, the MHSTs in Wiltshire schools. There's recently been a new wave of NHS England funding that has been approved for Wiltshire to further expand the MHST offer, so the mental health support team offer, and that's going to enable them to work in more schools. And then beyond that, we've got wider training delivery offers for school staff around mental health and emotional well-being, and around trauma-informed practice and mental health first aid are just some of those examples. So we recognise there's an increasing level of need in this space, and we are very clear both in the strategy and in the day-to-day kind of operational way that we're planning support for schools and families, that the challenges around children and young people's emotional health and well-being is very real and one that we need to prioritise.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay, we have a third one here. What are you doing in Wiltshire to prioritise the needs of neurodiverse children in schools? Catherine, would you be able to answer that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think my starting point for answering that question, Jerry, would be thinking about our specialist SEND service, so our team of advisory teachers that we have in the council. That training offer from that support service has always been free to schools, but we are really pleased that from September this year we've been able to expand that offer to include the Autism Education Trust, the AET training modules. Now there are two training modules in particular that we are working with schools around. The first module from the Autism Education Trust is called Making Sense of Autism. And the second module from the AET is called Schools Good Autism Practice. And those are our two areas of focus for this academic year. We've got 6 online twilight training sessions per term throughout this academic year for schools to book, and we're doing lots of publicity to encourage schools to sign up for those AET sessions. Over the last academic year, we also developed a new suite of training materials for schools focused on ADHD, and that is available online to all of our Wiltshire schools. That was created in response to requests from schools and was shared widely last year, but it still remains ongoing. In terms of other new developments as well, in the summer term of the last academic year, Wiltshire secondary schools were invited to apply for the Autism Inclusion Award, and that was in partnership with the National Autistic Society and our specialist SEND service. And really it was that recognition of the importance of that whole school culture led by the senior leadership team in a school, and what a difference that can make for children's experience day to day in schools. So the Autism Education Trust training, which will be delivered by the Specialist SEND service as part of the Autism Inclusion Award, will help our senior leaders in schools think about how they are including our autistic pupils and ensuring better outcomes. At the moment, we've already got 8 secondary schools registered to be part of this work. The initiative only started in September, so we're waiting for that to grow further. We also have a new project called PINS, which some of you may have heard about, the PINS project. That's Partnership for Inclusion of Neurodiversity in Schools. And we've got 20 primary schools in Wiltshire who are involved in the PINS project. And neurodiversity through PINS is defined quite widely here and does include autism. Wiltshire Parent Carer Council are also involved in that PINS project, which is excellent. And as part of this work, the schools will receive the equivalent of 5 days support across the next 6 months based upon the self-assessments we get back from schools and also the parent carer questionnaires that have been completed. So there's lots of new activity and also renewed activity of things that we know are tried and tested and work well in terms of supporting our schools around mainstream inclusion practice. But we're always really keen to hear from parent carers about what the priorities are for you in terms of your lived experience as families and what we might be able to add into that offer.
Thank you, Catherine. We're really getting lots of questions coming in the chat now, which is great. So this one says, how will you measure the success of the SEND plan? Will you be able to see whether this filters down to parents and children and to know it's actually making a difference at the ground level? Who would like to answer that one?
Perhaps it'd be helpful if I start off on that one, Jerry, and then invite my colleagues to kind of chip in and help out. Obviously, understanding again, kind of it's that week 3 for me, but in fact, that's a really important question. I think my experience is very much that families for far too long have had to fight for everything and struggle to get everything where they have children with special educational needs or a disability. Part of the measure of success for us is the dialogue that we're having this evening, and I was really interested to see that seminars, you wanted more seminars as we go forward. We'd be very happy to do that. That we continue this dialogue, and that over time, actually, you're telling us loud and clear that we're making information more readily available to you. We're designing services with you and having those conversations right at the beginning. For me personally, I understand that many families see education, health and care plans as the golden ticket, as that thing that means you can access services. Actually, in fact, I'd kind of like to work with you to turn that on its head a little bit here, that we make sure that that you know about the services you don't need an education, health and care plan for, and that we extend and broaden that out so that, again, we're having that dialogue with you, and that we're pushing on earlier intervention and prevention, so that families don't feel they have to go through that battle and that process. So that for me is a big measure of the success. Again, I was looking with interest at the feedback from the Mentimeter about people that didn't know about the newsletter, didn't know about the plan or different parts. Clearly there's more that we need to do there, and I'm really clear with Catherine and Lisa that we're going to take that on board and do something about it. So for me, it's about that families are telling me consistently that they know what the offer is it's a good offer locally, and that they feel listened to by services. And again, it's not just Wiltshire Council services, it's across the partnership. But those are measures of success as far as I'm concerned. I don't know whether anybody else wants to come in on the back of that.
We have another question here. Lisa, I wonder if you could answer this one for us. So why is it that children have had to be educated out of county and not provided the same support as children placed within county? For example, post-16 transitions, schools have not been informed about Wiltshire services. Could you answer that one, Lisa, for us, please?
Yes, of course, Jerry, thank you. So there's a multitude of reasons why the local authority might agree to a placement out of county. for a young person. And sometimes that's about the provision out of county perhaps being best placed to meet the young person's needs. But of course, sometimes it's also as a result of the young person or a parent preference. I don't think there's ever an excuse really for awareness of Wiltshire provision and services, and I'm very much hearing from the question posed that there will be occasions potentially where information hasn't been shared with the setting in another local authority about routes, pathways into adulthood, support services, etc., that are available here in county. And I would find that really disappointing. Generally, young people, particularly in the post-16 phase, which I think this question is anchored around, would have support from our preparation for adulthood team if the young person has an EHCP. And, you know, I'm aware that signposting to services within our Wiltshire boundaries is very much part and parcel of the advice and support that is given to young people and their families as part of annual review process work, and also interface with other teams, for example, our children's and adult social care teams, particularly if young people have been out of county and residential provision. I'm not going to sit here from a position of absolute confidence and say that we never get it wrong or that we fully signpost. It's always our goal, our aspiration, and you know, I think sometimes if we have missed a trick there, we've got to learn from that and ensure that as part of all focused reviews, we do ensure that young people and their families are aware of what young people can transition back into in county. Hopefully that addresses the question, Jerry. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Another question we've had here on the chat. My daughter should be in an alternative provision, but her school will not use Wiltshire Council approved alternative provision if they are not Ofsted registered. How do Wiltshire Council manage the schools who are doing this? Who would like to answer that one?
So Jerry, we've had a couple of questions about AP, so I'll try and have a go at combining both of those and try and answer that around alternative provision, because I think there might be a few parent carers on listening to the webinar who might find that interesting and helpful. So alternative provision is can look different across a range of settings. Some alternative provision is DFE registered, so it's registered with the Department for Education, and in basic terms that means that the setting would be visited by Ofsted and would be inspected and receive a judgment around their effectiveness. So we have some registered AP in Wiltshire, but not a huge amount. And there is also unregistered alternative provision, and that is alternative providers who are in Wiltshire who are not registered with the DFE, but who are able to provide a really important offer for children and young people that might be directed off-site as part of a support for their additional needs. Now, in order to support schools and families, and actually whoever the commissioner is of that alternative provision, what we do in Wiltshire, which is common in most local authorities now, is that where there are alternative providers who are not registered with the DFE, the local authority will go through a quality assurance process and essentially produce a directory or a list that sets out alternative providers in the local area that have met our quality assurance standards around safeguarding, health and safety, and the quality of the offer that's provided. And that is designed to provide schools with some assurance in the alternative provision they might be considering to support children and young people who are on their roll, and to talk to parents and carers about those offers. Now, schools it is the school leadership's decision around what alternative provision they may choose to use for a child that's on their school roll, and the directory that the local authority develops and produces is designed and shared as a supportive tool for that. We do have an alternative provision team, a small team in the council that can provide advice, information and support, and that is something that is a relatively new service that's developed over the last sort of 3 years in Wiltshire. You will see that model of working very commonly across all local authorities, where we have a process to quality assure alternative provision that is not DFE registered, and then separately you will have DFE registered alternative provision that has a DFE number and that would be inspected through Ofsted. So I hope that helps kind of give a bit of an explanation of the landscape in terms of AP. What we recognise in Wiltshire is that in terms of sufficiency, what would be really helpful would be for us in Wiltshire to have more DFE registered alternative provision places. And so where we are able to, we work really closely with sort of national schemes through government about how we can expand and develop that. So, for example, where there are opportunities for us to work with multi-academy trusts to make bids for building new schools, new free schools, we will do that. And a good example of that is the alternative provision free school development plans that we have in Wiltshire, which means that we will have more alternative provision places available across the Wiltshire landscape.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay, another one here. Give me some real visible examples of how you are making the SEND system better for Wiltshire for our children. Lisa, would you like to answer that one?
Absolutely, Jerry, thank you. I think going back to presentation earlier, it's important to think about the additional resource-based and specialist provision which has been created in Wiltshire in the last 4 years. Everyone on the call will have heard that we've created something in the order of 875 places, and you know those are either in place and ready and occupied, or shortly will be. There's a significant place planning prioritisation here within Wiltshire, and that is supporting us in the SEND service to be able to place young people in the most appropriate provision, particularly where there are higher level needs and mainstream would no longer be appropriate. This is significant and stands out in terms of comparison between Wiltshire and other neighbouring authorities, and has enabled us to bring down wait times for specialist placements and resource-based placements also. So I think that's really, really important to reference. There's also a lot of work going on in terms of evolving support services, particularly early help services for children, young people and their families. And that's in terms of education, health and social care across our local area partnership. Jerry, I'm aware that we have some colleagues, professionals available to answer questions here this evening from our social care teams, and it may be appropriate to bring in some further responses there. But in terms of our health partnership, we've already heard earlier this evening from Catherine about the PINS project work around supporting young people with neurodiversity, around our Autism Education Trust work, our Dyslexia Friendly Schools work. As I say, that's looking at what we're doing in the educational space. We're also looking at and putting resource behind champion work in schools to support mainstream inclusion. And I could go on. There is a lot referenced in the strategy. I'll pause there for now, as I appreciate others may have more to offer here beyond what I've already said. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, Lisa. There's another comment here about how we plan to reach parent carers who have no idea that the strategy exists or that there is help out there. Who would like to answer that one?
I'm happy to come back in, Jerry, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Yeah, so historically, over the last 2 to 3 years, we have undertaken a significantly large annual survey called the POET survey. And it had many layers to it and many questions. And we found that it became quite unwieldy, actually, in terms of being a platform for parents and carers, young people, and also professionals in our SEND system to be able to give us feedback. So currently we're going through a process of reviewing and very much in partnership have been pulling together ideas about how best in the 21st century we can gather views and feedback from our stakeholders across the system. There are lots of ideas, particularly around the use of latest technology, software applications, that sort of thing. We're in an early exploratory phase around this work, but with some challenging deadlines to support getting a new way of surveying on a more frequent basis up and running. Our goal really in this respect is to be able to capture views from parents, carers, children, young people, professionals on a much more regular basis, taking targeted lines of questioning linked to our key priority work within the strategy, which has been talked about in this session. We are really hoping by being agile with that and being able to ask short, snappy questions at the right time that we can continue to get the feedback that we absolutely need, not just as part of an annual exercise, but as part of our business as usual, as a way of developing our service and services as we move forward. Thank you, Jerry.
Thanks, Lisa. And this next question, I think it might be one for you as well. So each time I've been told who our SEND lead is, the next time I email them, I'm told that the person is no longer holding that post and on to the next person we go. This is frustrating. Why is this constantly happening?
Yeah, I can absolutely understand how frustrating that would be. We all fundamentally like to have the safety and security of a trusted relationship when we are working with children and young people. And for parents and carers, that is absolutely fundamental as far as I'm concerned. I've worked in Wiltshire in the SEND and inclusion arena for many years now, and I've seen some changes over the years. We moved to a new way of working in 2023, and that was about responding to stakeholder feedback, that our teams which were more focused on areas of work in our statutory process, that those teams were not allowing for that personalisation, and therefore we moved to a new way of working towards the end of last year, where we moved back to localities and then with some specialism in terms of preparation for adulthood, which is an area of expertise in its own right, and also in terms of the statutory assessment period and activities that happen there. We've seen some significant improvements in terms of working with our children and young people and families in this new way of working. But I mentioned earlier in the session that we're undergoing a period of rapid change with significant recruitment. We have a very stable team who have stuck by us for many years and are very committed to our families. But I think it would be fair to say that as volumes of EHCPs have increased within Wiltshire, we've had a bit of a lag between having a team large enough to cope with the volumes and provide that good quality customer service that we aspire to. It's very much our goal, and I am seeing improvements, but I would like to see more as we move forward and we get fully staffed up, everybody trained, and we can really be providing the sterling service that families demand, and rightly so. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Lisa.
We have a long question here, which is actually in two parts. I'm going to read out the second part of the question. So this one says, as a therapist in schools myself, I know that not all SENCOs and staff are trained. Many kids are struggling without specialised support. How are you going to ensure schools are trained and families and children are supported? Catherine, would you like to answer that one?
Yeah, absolutely, Jerry. Thank you. We are absolutely committed to making sure that as part of the mainstream inclusion improvements that we need to see across the local area, that workforce development in terms of training for staff in schools is really at the core of that. There's probably a couple of things that I'd want to mention. First of all, that we have from the beginning of this academic year made access to the SEND training offer from the local authority free of charge to all Wiltshire schools. So previously, where for some sessions we had a cost attached to those, we have taken that away because we were concerned that that might create a barrier for some schools in terms of accessing that important advice and information. We have developed our OPAL tool, our OPAL resource, so ordinarily available provision for all learners. That resource is set out within the local offer pages, and we've done a really significant amount of work in schools, but also with the children's workforce across Wiltshire, making sure that we are improving awareness of what families should be able to expect and what schools would be best equipped to deliver in terms of an ordinarily available offer for children and young people who've got additional needs. So the rollout of the OPAL work is a really important part of that training, and also thinking about what's the expertise that we already have out there in our schools. So really thinking about what the outreach offer is from our special schools, for example, in order to continue to build the capacity of our mainstream schools around special educational needs and disability. We also, within our workforce development plan, are using the Council for Disabled Children materials because we recognise those as a really high quality resource to help us build on the capacity of our staff in schools to be able to meet the needs of our children. And then over and above that, really just thinking about from a strategic perspective in schools, how are SENCOs and leaders in school thinking about how they are auditing and self-evaluating practice around special educational needs and disability, and what does inclusion look like in each school in Wiltshire. So we have a team of people who are working directly with school leaders around that to support the workforce development priorities, particularly around making sure that inclusion is as strong as it needs to be, right from the top in terms of the senior leadership in the school and right the way through. So the person who's asked that question today, who delivers therapy in schools, I'm sure you'll be really well aware, and I'm sure you're an incredibly valuable asset in your school setting as well in terms of sharing expertise and building capacity. But that phrase around building capacity is really important to us, and whatever we are delivering around training in schools is about that. It's about building the capacity of our schools to be better able to meet the needs of our children and young people.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay, well, we're nearly out of time, so thank you everyone for the varied questions. We're going to start wrapping up the evening now. We will be sharing those questions and answers on our local offer web pages. Next slide, please, Dom. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us this evening and for taking the time to share your thoughts and your questions. And we're really looking forward to working with you as we move forward together. Thank you.